Hi everyone, my name's Diabetor, and today I'm going to show you 3 different ways to beat Maliketh easily and without cheese or summons. In that first clip, we acquired the Lordsworn's Greatsword from the carriage at the Gatefront Ruins. After that, we're heading just north of it to the War Master's shack in Stormhill. Here you can talk to War Master Banal, who will sell you a bunch of Ashes of War. The ones that we're looking for are Impaling Thrust, and I also picked up Endure. If he's not here, then you can also meet him in the Volcano Manor. After that, just to the northeast of the War Master's shack, we're going to go grab the Golden Vow Ash of War, as well as the Lance Great Spear. The Golden Vow Ash of War can be acquired by killing this knight. He's pretty easy because he's a Limgrave enemy, and on death he will drop the Golden Vow Ash of War. Here you see I have it on a dagger. You can put it on any weapon you want. I just use a dagger because I have 700 of them in my inventory. And then right next to that, there's this ruins here. You can see it's on the road. You can jump down to it from the cliff. And there's a corpse next to the owl that will give you the Lance Great Spear. The Greatsword will be method number 1, the Lance will be method number 2, and we'll also use the antspur Rapier as method number 3. There's going to be a link down in the description showing you how to get the antspur Rapier easily. I recommend you follow that because there's also another item known as the Blasphemous Claw, which we can also get using the method that we got the antspur Rapier with. Anyway, we head over to Summonwater Village to grab the Green Turtle Talisman. That increases our stamina regen, so it makes it easier to sprint around the arena and dodge away from Maliketh when he does his attacks. After that, I chose to get the Claw Talisman from near the Rampart Tower site of Grace in Stormvale. If you're having trouble making this jump, you'll see here, I jump up in the air, and then while I'm airborne, I start holding down the sprint button. That way when I land, I'm already sprinting. So you can do that up on top of this little platform here, and that makes it easier to do a sprint jump to get across the gap there. Anyway, so you climb up the little wrecked pillar, come up here. There's a bunch of exile soldiers. Make sure you kill them because they will knock you off the ladder if you don't kill them first. And then climb up the ladder, and at the top of the tower is the Claw Talisman. I ended up not actually getting as much use out of the Claw Talisman as I thought I would, so later on when I talk about our loadout, I'll tell you about a couple alternative options. After that, we're heading to Mohgwyn Palace. I actually have a whole video about how to get here because it's a fairly lengthy process and I didn't want to make this video be an hour long. But from the entrance side of Grace, you can come over to this little ledge. You can toss down a rainbow stone. If the rainbow stone makes like a really loud crash when it lands, then the fall will kill you. But if it just lands and, lights up the area, then it's a safe height to jump from. We run around the corner from there, and we grab the Halig Drake Talisman +2, which is really nice because Maliketh does a lot of holy damage in his second phase, and we're going to want to get some negation going for that. After that, I headed to the Temple of Igle site of Grace in Volcano Manor. I have a whole video about how to get to the Volcano Manor too, if you need to know how to do that. But from that site of Grace, we're going to head up into this room, right before the entrance to Rykard. Instead of going to Rykard, we're going to come around the corner and come to this cage room. Instead of dropping down onto the cages, you can come around on the right side here, and there's another little ledge you can drop down to. If you don't land on that part on the wall, it should still be a safe fall. But, you can jump to the wall like that if you want to. Just walk straight off the ledge. And then once you come around, there's a staircase you go up, and there's another platform you come down. This body, I think, has like a rune arc or something on it. And then you can drop down onto this area here. And this corpse over here will have the Dagger Talisman. We're grabbing the Dagger Talisman because Maliketh only has 80 poise, so it's really easy to break his stance and get a riposte on him, and having the Dagger Talisman means the riposte will do way more damage. After that, we're going to head over to the Abandoned Cave in Caelid. You can see if you come across the main road, you'll come to this site of Grace next to the Finger Raider Crone, and then directly to the east of that is the cave entrance. When you come over here, you see that Virgin Abductor on the right by the big root. It'll aggro when you jump down to this route to get across to the abandoned cave, so be careful of that. This is a really short cave to get through. This muck will slow you down if you're in like a new game +0. My character's in new game plus, so I'm able to walk through it at full speed, but it shouldn't be too hard to get past. Anyway, run past the rats and the mushroom guys, and then when you come to the big room with the Miranda flowers, you can jump up these Virgin Abductor corpses, and on this body up here, you get the Venomous Fang. You might find this helpful. I ended up not using it all that much, but it builds up a decent amount of deadly poison damage. Maliketh is also fairly weak to poison, so that's why we grabbed that. After that, we're heading to the Swamp of Aeonia. You'll see this little curve here on the swamp. Directly north of that is a little sandbar type of thing with this Ash of War scarab on top of it. This one teleports away when you get close to it, so you're going to need a ranged weapon of some kind, be it a bow and arrow, spells. I used a throwing pot. He gives you the Poisonous Mist Ash of War. After that, we're going to head to the Beside the Great Bridge site of Grace in Farum Azula. Obviously, this is right before the Maliketh fight. Instead of going to Maliketh, we're going to go the other way and come onto this little bridge over here. In order to fight Recusant Bernal over here, I think you need to have killed Rykard, so keep that in mind. I actually have a whole video about that if you need help getting that done. And you'll see I switched to a second character to fight him because on that other character, I've already killed Bernal. This character's higher level, but I have the Palisade Shield not upgraded at all. I do have the Shield Crash Ash of War on it with a cold infusion, so that way it does bleed buildup and cold buildup. And as you're going to see in a second, when you hit him, it hits a bunch of times, and so it procs bleeds and frostbite real fast. And if you get him into a corner, you can just keep him completely stun locked. You're going to need decent stamina regen, so that's why the Turtle Talisman's helpful. Let me look at this. He can't do anything. The only reason he gets to heal here is because I ran out of FP, and so I had to back off to drink a flask, and so he got to drink a flask in the process. But so make sure you have a decent amount of FP for this fight, and then you shouldn't have too much trouble with him. And also, don't get hit by his Ash of War that he does, because that does a ton of damage and heals him. And don't let him lead you into the room behind him, because there's like 4 beastmen in there that'll kick your ass. Upon death, he gives you all his gear and the Blasphemous Claw, which we're going to need to parry Maliketh's Black Blade. I promise, I know parrying sounds hard if you're not used to doing it, but this is way easier than parrying any kind of normal attack, and I'll talk about that later too. After that, I headed over to the Outer Wall Battleground site of Grace, or I think I'm at the Hermit Merchant Shack, but they're pretty much the same spot. From here, we're going to run over to the Minor Erd Tree in the capital outskirts, because underneath that tree is the Winged Crystal tier, which reduces our equip load. So real quick, if you need help over here for some reason, there's like no boss over here. You don't even have to kill the enemy to get it. But if you need help, there's a Effigy of the Martyr there, and then at the basin at the foot of the tree is the Winged Crystal tier. I'll talk about why that's helpful in a little bit. After that, we're going to head over to the Minor Erd Tree and the Dragon Barrow. If you need a shortcut to get over here, you can head over to the Third Church of Marika in Limgrave. Just behind it, in this little pond, there's a way gate that'll teleport you over to the Bestial Sanctum in the Dragon Barrow. So from the Bestial Sanctum, you just follow the road to the south. There's a site of Grace along the way. There's a dragon on the bridge, be careful of that. And that takes you to the Minor Erd Tree. Behind the Erd Tree is a Spirit Spring that'll take you up to Fort Feroth, where there's a site of Grace. So over here, we're going to have to kill the Putrid Avatar guarding the tree. These things are weak to fire. They have like a negative 100% resistance to fire. So make sure you use some kind of fire attack. I recommend something like Flaming Strike. And they're also weak to strike damage, so that's why I'm using a Great Hammer. Now again, I had to switch over to another character to do this because I had already killed it on that one. This thing does have a lot of health and it hits pretty hard, but it actually has a really simple moveset once you get to understand it. So I'm going to talk about a couple moves here. The main one that's probably going to get you is this one, the Atomic Ass Blast that it does. It's actually really easy to dodge once you know how it works though. Other than that, if you're rolling its attacks or, like hitting it or anything, don't mash R1. You can get 1, maybe 2 attacks in at a time and then, roll away. Don't keep mashing R1 because then you're going to get hit by it. So you see here, when it jumps up into the air, it's going to float for a couple frames. Once it starts coming down really slowly and then it kind of launches downwards. Once it starts coming down slowly like that, that's when you need to dodge. So I always dodge to the left, and in fact here I'm using the Winged Crystal tier that we picked up a minute ago. That way I get light rolls, and so you get more distance on the dodge, and that makes it a lot easier to not get hit by that attack. Here you see it doing Golden Land, so here's another replay of that. So as soon as you see it bring its hammer upside down like that, it's got a really obvious tell. So stop attacking, stop whatever you're doing, get ready to dodge. If you're in front of it, then it'll try to hit you with the hammer when it brings it down. So dodge that, and then dodge again to dodge the explosion. Afterwards, just run away and run kind of in a circle around the avatar. That way, the projectiles from the Golden Land don't hit you, and since you ran away from the avatar, it can't hit you with its staff. I would recommend using a weapon like the Starfist or the Iron Balls that you can get from the Blackguard, but the hitbox on this tree is like kind of wonky, and so it can be really hard to actually hit with a short weapon, which is why I like to use a Great Hammer. It makes it a lot easier to just hit it. It is slow, but so is the tree, so you shouldn't have too hard of a time as long as you stay patient. Don't get greedy. You know, that's what I'm saying. Don't mash R1. If you get an opening and then just start spamming R1, then it's gonna hit you while you're in an attack animation and you can't dodge. So be patient, wear it down, exploit its weaknesses, and it will die. Upon death, it drops the Opaline Hard tier, which increases our damage negation for all forms of damage. Again, that's going to be helpful not only for the physical damage that MALIKETH does, but also for the holy damage that he's going to do in his phase 2. Alright, so now it's time to talk about our stats and our loadout. So starting with the stats, the most important one is Vigor. You're going to want at least 40 Vigor for this fight, and I actually recommend that for any character. Absolutely any character you make. If it's a warrior, if it's a mage, archer, whatever you want to do, every character needs to have at least 40 Vigor. That's a good amount of health to have. It's the first soft cap for Vigor, and it kind of feels like it's the intended amount of health that you're supposed to have. If you really need a bit of extra help, I recommend going up to 60 Vigor. That way you'll have like 1900 health points. But definitely no less than 40. That is an absolute necessity. I did have a limited amount to work with because I'm only at level 61. I always do these at a lower level than intended because I want to show you how effective the build is. You know, I'm not trying to show off. I'm not some kind of god gamer or anything like that. But if I can do it at level 61 with plus 12 weapons, then you should have no trouble doing it at level 100 with plus 20 to plus 24 weapons. Speaking of which, that's the recommended level to do this fight at. Level 100 to probably maybe like 110 with plus 20 to plus 24 weapons. By the time you get to MALIKETH, you should have access to all the smithing stone bell bearings, so it shouldn't be hard for you to level up your weapons. Now we're going to talk about the gear that we're going to use for this fight. So the first thing is the dagger with Golden Vow. You can use any weapon you want. I just use a dagger because I have a bunch of spare daggers lying around. If you use the Misery Cord, that's also really helpful to have if you want to soft swap to that for the riposts when you break MALIKETH's stance. Speaking of riposts and stance breaks, we're going to be using the Lordsworn's Greatsword. You can use any Greatsword you want, but I like using the Lordsworn's because I'm not going to be soft swapping to a dagger for the crits. The Lordsworn's gets that 110 critical multiplier, so it does a bunch of extra damage on a crit, and that stacks with the Dagger Talisman. The specific reason why we're using a Greatsword and also the Lance, which I'll talk about later, is because Greatswords get a base poise damage of 5.5. That base poise damage gets multiplied based on the kind of attack that you're doing. Impaling Thrust gives it a 600% multiplier, which means that an Impaling Thrust with a Greatsword will do 33 poise damage. Now MALIKETH only has 80 poise health, so 33 times 3 equals 99. It only takes 3 Impaling Thrusts to break his stance and set him up for a riposte. If you want to know more about poise damage and how to maximize your poise damage, I'll link a video down in the description by the YouTuber Krite. His video is a lot more in depth and he knows a lot more about this game than I do, but suffice it to say, Greatswords and the Lance are very good because they get a 5.5 base poise damage. You could also use Piercing Fang instead of Impaling Thrust. Piercing Fang gets like better tracking, I think, and it might get slightly more range than Impaling Thrust, but it also uses more FP, so I like to stick with Impaling Thrust because my character is only 10 mind. The second method I'm going to show you to kill MALIKETH is with the antspur Rapier. Now this one, I consider to be like kind of on the borderline of cheese, and that it's really easy to just use the antspur Rapier for like every boss that you kill. Like my previous video, how to kill the fire giant, I use the antspur Rapier for that. I personally think it's a lot more fun if you switch up your build every now and again, so I don't want to use the antspur Rapier to kill everything, but the option is here for you if you need that extra bit of help that you get from it. I'm going to show the antspur Rapier as its own whole method. If you want to, you can use it to inflict Scarlet Rot on MALIKETH and then switch over to the Greatsword or the Lance or whatever, and then fight him with that, but I use it just as its own method because like you can literally just hit him with Poison and Rot and then run away, and he'll die. The reason I'm talking about Poison and Rot specifically is because those are the two status effects that MALIKETH is weak to. He's got decent bleed and frostbite resistance, so I don't really recommend using those, even though I put it on the Rapier, that I'll talk about in a second. And he's practically immune to sleep, so there's no point in using that. But the reason why we're using Poisonous Mist is because it's an occult style infusion. So that means when you cast Poisonous Mist, it buffs the rapier with poison buildup. And then since we can use the blood infusion on the rapier, that means that we'll get poison, bleed, and the built-in Scarlet Rot buildup all at once. So we're building up 3 status effects at them at once. Plus it does pierce damage, which is just good in general because you get like counterattack damage with that. It's really good. It does bonus damage essentially. And so that's what makes the antspur rapier super strong. If you wanted to, you could give it like Chilling Mist or something and do like cold and Scarlet Rot at the same time, but I like the poison. The final method I'll show you, like I said, is with the lance. This is pretty much the same thing as the greatsword. It does a base 5.5 poise damage. It's just that the lance is a lot longer. Maliketh's hitbox can be pretty wonky sometimes depending on the move that he's doing, so you might have an easier time hitting him with the extra range that the lance gives you. The final weapon in my inventory is the Venomous Fang that we got before. I didn't actually end up using this one all that much. I would recommend this one in addition to one of the other methods. I really can't recommend using the Venomous Fang on its own. It does do poison buildup, and that can be like infused with like, in addition to bleed or cold or whatever you want, but it doesn't do enough actual damage with the weapon itself to make it worth using against Maliketh, so I don't recommend doing it. And so now we're going to talk about talismans and stuff. So you'll see on the screen right now I'm highlighting the holy damage negation that I've got. So with the Halig Drake talisman on, I can't see the exact numbers. I think with the talisman plus my armor, I'm getting like 30-something holy resistance. And then if you don't want to use the claw talisman, you can use something like the Pearl Drake talisman in addition to that. And that'll bring the holy up to like 45% with the Halig Drake talisman. And then I just used the Divine Fortification spell there, and that brings it up to like 50-something%, because Divine Fortification gives you 30% holy resistance. If you have Lord's Divine Fortification, that gives you 60% holy resistance. So it doesn't stack with the regular Divine Fortification spell, but it does stack with the talismans, and so that would give you like a total of like 70% holy negation or something like that. If you don't want to use the spells, if you don't have them or whatever, you can get Holy Proof Dried Livers. This does 30% like Divine Fortification, but it does not stack with the spells. However, it does stack with the talismans, so keep that in mind. You could also probably get different armor. I'll probably put that down in the description if you want to maximize your holy resistance. This also all stacks with the Opaline Hard tier that we're going to put in the Wondrous Physic, so we'll have like 60, 70, 80% holy negation depending on what combination you use. I actually didn't use any of the spells in the video, but it is worth keeping in mind if you're having difficulty with his Phase 2. In Phase 1, he does pretty much all physical damage, and a little bit of magic damage, so you want to use like Boiled Crab or something like that to maximize your physical negation. I just want to take an extra second to talk about crits again. So we had the Dagger Talisman on that buffs critical hits by I think like 17% or something like that. So I mentioned soft swapping earlier. If you don't know what that means, soft swapping is when you have a weapon equipped in your second or third slot in one of your hands, and then you use the D-pad to switch to that weapon quickly. So if you want to use a dagger or something like the Misericord in one of your other slots, then you can hit Maliketh with the 3 impaling thrusts to break his stance, and then soft swap to the Misericord and hit him with the crit on that for way more damage than you would get from like the Greatsword or something like that. But I didn't do that in this guide, so that's why we're using the Lord Sword's Greatsword, because it does still get a bonus critical multiplier. And then as for the other talismans, I strongly recommend the Turtle Talisman, or you can use something like Pickled Turtlenecks. That gives you extra stamina regen, because Maliketh has some pretty long combos that you're going to want to dodge away from, so it's good to have the extra stamina. As for the Claw Talisman, I put that on because I really didn't know what else to put there. It gives a pretty significant increase to your jump attack damage, so I thought that might be helpful because there's a couple moves that you can dodge from Maliketh by jumping instead of rolling, but I didn't use it all that much. If you want to use something other than the Claw Talisman, I strongly recommend Shard of Alexander, which will make your Impaling Thrust do even more damage. Or if you're using the Rapier or the Lance, I recommend using the Spear Talisman, which will make your counterattacks do more damage. Essentially, if the enemy is in an attack animation and you hit them with pierce damage, it's called a counterattack. Counterattacks are when the enemy takes 15% extra pierce damage, and if you use the Spear Talisman, that 15% goes up to, I think, like 25% or something like that. So that's good to have if you're using a pierce weapon. As for consumables, we're going to use Fan Daggers and the Blasphemous Claw. So, like I said, it's a lot easier to hit a Blasphemous Claw parry than you might think. Malekith only has like 3 moves that can actually be parried with this thing, but it's kind of hard to like demonstrate with just the default camera. But essentially, the Blasphemous Claw makes like an orb around you. That orb lingers for like a second or like half a second, something like that, so you get a pretty good window to actually have him hit the orb with the attack and have it cause a parry. So I'll talk about that more when I show it in the video. And we're using fan daggers, so if he jumps away from you, or if you have to like do a dodge and roll away from him or whatever, if you hit him with a fan dagger, that prevents his poise from regenerating, and so that makes it a lot easier to, you know, keep his poise health low and get a stance break on him so you can get a riposte. You can also use poison bone darts, which will do poison buildup. I like the fan daggers because they're easier to hit because it throws out 5 of them at once. In addition to that, I was using heavy infused weapons, so I probably should have used a grease on my weapon. I recommend fire, magic, or lightning if you just want to increase your damage, because he's only got 40% resistance to those. Do not use holy damage against him because he has 80% holy resistance. And then for status effects, I recommend either poison or rot. I don't recommend using bleed or frostbite because he has a pretty good amount of resistance to those. And don't waste your time trying to hit him with sleep because he has like 2300 sleep resistance and it's never going to happen, so don't even bother. So obviously at the start of the fight, we're going to drink the Wondrous Physic and cast Golden Vow. Any other buffs that you have, you can also cast. I like to keep it simple and just use Vow. It's better if you kill the Draconic Tree Sentinel outside, so that you can cast outside before you enter the fog wall. So I mentioned the Venomous Fang earlier, and I'm trying to use it here to proc the poison on him. I really would have been better off just hitting him with some poison bone darts or like a poison pot or something. His hitbox is a little awkward and he jumps away a lot, so it's hard to just maintain consistent poison buildup with a short weapon like the Venomous Fang. Later on, when I show you the antspur Rapier, you'll see it's a lot easier to proc the poison with. So I finally procced the poison, and I'm going to switch back over to the Lord Sorin's Greatsword now to start hitting him with Impaling Thrusts. So if you have the Light Roll tier equipped like I did, you shouldn't have much trouble dodging his attacks as long as you only hit once or twice in between rolls. It's really a matter of just being patient, not mashing R1. You only want to hit him once or twice in a row. Later on, when I use the antspur Rapier, it attacks a lot faster, and it's longer than the claws, so it's a lot easier to get a couple hits off in a row. But with a heavier weapon or a slower weapon, I recommend just 1 or 2 hits. And so you see I'm really relying on the Impaling Thrusts. After a few of them, I get the Stance Break and I move in for the Riposte. If you're using a lighter weapon, you might be able to get a couple hits in while his stance is broken. And you see there, as he was waking up after the Riposte, I hit him with another Impaling Thrust, so that way I only have to hit him twice more now that he's actually in combat. And you also saw when he dodged away, I threw fan daggers at him to make sure that it keeps his poise health low, so that it doesn't regenerate while he's far away from me. If you need to heal or restore your FP or recast a buff, I recommend you run around behind a pillar. He can do a couple range attacks as you saw, and so you don't really want to be in sight of him when you're doing an animation. Now we start phase 2, it teleports you over to this side of the arena and puts him right in the middle of it. He'll always do 2 swings on his hind legs, and then depending on where you move, he can do a couple different follow-up moves. So I like to dodge toward him so that he does this spinning slash on the side. You can dodge his spinning slash by dodging twice, one after the other, into him. Do not dodge away, dodge toward him, because he moves toward you. So you want to dodge toward him so you end up behind him. So you saw me fail one parry, and then I hit the second one. To hit it, once he comes down toward you with the sword, you'll see it's glowing yellow. Once he starts moving down towards you, that's when you hit X to use the claw. When I say when he moves down toward you, like he jumps upwards and then comes down in like an arc, you know? So you gotta wait till he starts coming down to hit X. This move is really important to learn how to dodge because it does a ton of damage if he does the follow-up. So you see he grabs the sword with 2 hands and slashes from his bottom right to his top left. Dodge that first swing, move underneath his legs, you can get a hit in after you dodge that first part. If you're right underneath him, then his vertical chop won't hit you, and then you want to unlock from him. You need to unlock after that second hit, and you need to sprint toward him. Dodge the swing as it's coming toward you, and then get behind him. This is much easier to do if you unlock, so make sure you unlock. After his anime blade is done, you can hit him with an impaling thrust and then stop attacking because he'll do another move. So in this case, he jumped up on the pillar and came down with a pogo stick on me. You'll see here, I parry it a little bit too late. I should have parried a bit earlier when he started coming down, not right before he hit me. Like I said before, you have a pretty big window. It's just his sword has to hit the orb that comes off of the Blasphemous Claw, so you can do it earlier than it feels like you necessarily should. So here he decides to back off. You'll see he does a dodge backwards and winds up for the swing, and then he does 2 spinning slashes at you. So again, make sure you dodge into these because he moves toward you while he's doing it, and if you dodge to the side or backwards, he'll hit you on the second swing. Again, most of his attacks can be punished with an impaling thrust, so do that. I tried to go in for a couple extra hits, but I missed the riposte, so make sure you actually hit the riposte. And so when he jumps onto a pillar and jumps off to shoot a blade at you, he can do either 1, 2, or 3 attacks, and he does a different follow-up depending on whether or not he does 1, 2, or 3. As you saw there, if he only does 1 blade at you, then he'll just land far away from you, so you only have to dodge 1 blade. And again here, dodge toward the first slash, you'll be underneath him so the second slash won't hit you. You can do a follow-up attack there and then immediately unlock. So he swings towards you once, you'll be underneath him so that shouldn't hit you. I dodged too early here so I got hit by the second swing, and because I was stunned, I got hit by the anime blade. I tried to dodge away from him, but he kind of moves toward you, so it's nearly impossible to dodge away from him. You have to get behind him. Here he does a vertical chop and then does a quick follow-up afterwards. So I dodged toward him and then immediately did an impaling thrust. You should dodge and then give him a second to see if he's going to do a follow-up attack. So here he jumped up in the air, he does 3 blades. So that's 1, I got hit by it because I was healing. I dodged the second one. You want to dodge as the projectile spawns, typically. Then he does a third one. It hit the pillar, but don't rely on the pillar for cover here, because usually he'll slide past it. If he does 3 blades in the air, then his follow-up attack will be that spinning slash, and you want to dodge toward him, not away from him, so that you don't get hit by the second part of the slash. Here you see I got ready to dodge his anime blade, but he chose not to do it. So always assume that he's gonna do it. You don't want to take that off chance that he won't do it and get hit by it. Worst case scenario, you just miss a hit by assuming that he's gonna do it. Here he did his thing where he jumps up the air again, and he did 3 again this time. So here I was in a good spot where I parried it. So I dodged the third one. As you're coming out of the roll, you want to immediately hit the Blasphemous Claw, and that should parry it. So dodge the second one, dodge the third one, it hit the pillar, but you should still try to dodge it anyway. He comes in for the swipe, and I immediately hit Blasphemous Claw as I come out of the roll, and that stops him from doing the slash. Now you see, even if you get the parry, he still does a swing as his, oh shit, I just got parried animation, so be careful to dodge those. And you also saw my first impaling thrust there missed, because I was out of range, because his hitbox is a little shitty. So that's why the lance would be so great. But anyway, so I got the stance break and I could have killed him, but I jumped off instead because I want to show the other 2 methods. So now method 2 is the antspur Rapier. So instead of trying to cast Poisonous Mist on him, I just cast it to buff the Rapier. And then you'll see, so because my follow-up attacks are so fast with the Rapier, I can roll into him and get hits that I couldn't have gotten with the Greatsword. So each hit is doing less damage, but I'm getting more of them, and they're also building up the status effects. And you'll also notice I'm making liberal use of the fan daggers because they're great for maintaining his poise damage and getting a little bit of extra damage in. So now he's poisoned. It should only take about 7 to 10 hits to get him poisoned, assuming you're using Poisonous Mist. There I also got a bleed buildup and I proc the rot. The Rapier does 50 rot buildup on hit, and he only has about 350 rot resist, so theoretically it should take 7 hits to proc it. But his rot buildup also goes down automatically over time, so usually you can expect to do it in about 10 or so hits. And then you see here I proc the rot and the poison, and I just fucking ran away. Combined together, rot and poison will do about 25% of his total health, and then the bleed and the other hits that I was doing to proc them did the other 25%, and so it took him down to phase 2 just on its own. So now we're going into phase 2. I get the Blasphemous Claw ready, and then I dodge toward him. That causes him to do this, dodge toward that, and then you can get a couple hits in. He does a pogo stick. This time I decided to dodge it. there's a follow-up explosion that happens, so make sure you dodge that too. Here he does his 2 slashes into the anime blade, so I unlock, dodge those, and then run toward him. Here, he only does 1 blade when he jumps away, so I only have to dodge that, and then I have time to buff my sword with a Poisonous Mist. Here he does another anime blade setup, but he doesn't do the actual anime blade. Again, better safe than sorry, always assume he's going to do it. He did his follow-up, and since I didn't have Impaling Thrust, I just dodged it. Here's another pogo stick, and this time I actually parried it, so he jumps up, up, then he starts coming down. That's when you hit X. This stun animation is a great time to hit him for a couple extra proc buildup, or you could cast Poisonous Mist on him. Now he's rotted and poisoned, and I've already got him down to about 25% health, so he's pretty much a dead man walking. I'm just going to dodge away from him because I can. Again, here he does 3 blades at me, so dodge the first one, dodge the second one, dodge the third one, and then as he starts coming toward you, immediately as you come out of the roll, hit X. That'll hit him with the Blasphemous Claw. Be careful not to get hit by his blind swipes, and, you know, hit him with the Rapier, proc that bleed buildup. Here he goes for the anime blade, dodge toward him, unlock, get behind him, bada bang bada boom. Double slashes, double dodge toward him. Here he does a roar. If you're in front of him, that'll knock you down, but it doesn't do damage, and then you can just roll recover to dodge whatever hit he does as a follow-up there. And as you can see, I'm just running away from him and letting the poison do its thing, and he dies. And now finally, method 3 is going to be the lance. So he does that claw attack, I dodge toward it. You can also jump over his beast claw attacks. And so you see here, this is like his standard move where he does 2 slashes at you. If you dodge toward him, then he'll immediately afterwards do like some kind of a follow-up. He'll either do this one where he hits you a couple times, or he'll do another swipe and then his bestial sling. So unless you're using a fast weapon, I don't recommend trying to punish that like 2 swing attack, because he does a follow-up with it. Most of his other attacks you can punish pretty consistently because they don't really get follow-ups. Here, I got the stance break, so I go for the riposte. I just want to say, if I was using the Misery Chord to do these ripostes instead, it would only take like 2 ripostes to kill him. He would be nearly into phase 2 by this point if I had used the Misery Chord to do that. So just now you saw I hit him with the Wake Up Impaling Thrust, and then I managed to get a jump attack on him. So I got a Jumping Heavy, and that does about 30 poise damage too. And then I hit him with another Impaling Thrust, and that stance broke him. Again, if that was with the Misery Chord, he'd already be in phase 2. Hit him with an Impaling Thrust to wake him up. In a second here, I got a little too greedy. I dodged his thrusting attack, and then I tried to go for a Fan Dagger. I should have dodged again. If he sticks his arm in the ground, he's going to do that attack. You can back off, and as he's pulling his arm out, you can dodge. That's how you dodge that one. Get him into phase 2. Now you see here, I finished him with a riposte, so it doesn't teleport my character to that spot. So that can mess with this setup a little bit. In this case, he ended up doing the setup for the anime blade, but then he didn't do the anime blade. Again, 2 spinning slashes, dodge toward them. He jumps up and goes for a pogo stick, so he jumps up. Once he starts coming down, that's when you hit X. And then, of course, he goes into his confused stun animation, so be careful not to get hit by him there. While he's in the stun animation, it's really easy to hit him with a couple Impaling Thrusts because the lance is just so huge, so that's what I did. Get the riposte, wake him up with an Impaling Thrust. Afterwards, he instantly did the anime blade, and because he was too close to the pillar, I couldn't dodge him because I'm used to going to his left. But since I had the Halig Drake Talisman on, it didn't kill me, so, you know, make sure you do that. Here he did a pogo stick into an explosion, so make sure you dodge the pogo stick and the explosion. And dodge to his behind so that he doesn't do an anime blade follow-up. Here he jumped on the pillar and came down for a pogo stick, so again, he jumps up. When he starts coming down, hit X, do the Blasphemous Claw, that stuns him. This time you'll see I had kind of bad positioning, and that's my fault. I went for an Impaling Thrust, but he got stuck on the pillar, so I wasn't where I thought I'd be, and I got hit by that attack. So always look out for his confused stun swings. Here he jumped up in there and did 2 blades, and then came down for an attack, so dodge the first one. Dodge the second one. I dodged maybe a little bit too early there, and then as he starts coming down afterwards, hit the Blasphemous Claw. So while he's stunned here, I get 2 Impaling Thrusts in, and like we established, it only takes 3 Impaling Thrusts to stun him. So I gave him a second to see, make sure I wasn't going to get hit by a follow-up. He does the setup for his anime blade. Normally I wouldn't try to punish that with an Impaling Thrust, but I knew I was going to get the stance break on the 3rd Impaling Thrust, and he wouldn't be able to finish the attack. So that's why I did it there, and then obviously go for the riposte, and he's dead. If you found that helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll catch you later.